I'm a tank main in plat 2900, and this is the third season I'm close to diamond, and I just can't enter it. Uh, One of the biggest differences between platinums and diamonds is almost always going to be ult usage and timing. So, like we saw here in low diamond, how I thought that the biggest impact that they could make on their gameplay was the correct usage of their ultimates. Platinums waste ultimates all the time. If you are platinum and have been stuck in platinum, I think the first thing for you to look at would be how and when you use your ultimate. Cool. And let's take a look at this one. So this is D.Va in platinum. Whoa, sorry. Platinum D.Va. Okay. I'm in Masters, but I can't afford to buy and play on an alt account. What is the second best way to master a hero for comp? Pugs? Scrims? Customs? Quick play is pretty... I don't like... I honestly don't like quick play. But, like, you could either, like, tank your main account's SR while you're learning, play in pugs, join a team to scrim, you know, play in customs. So, it really depends. But, honestly, having an alt account, like if you wait for a free weekend, a new copy of Overwatch is only like $20. So I'd probably just wait for a free weekend. You know, maybe just postpone your learning of that hero until one of the free weekends where Overwatch is $20 and then bite it there. Just like skip out on breakfast or something. I don't know. After Thursday's review, I had an idea that playing Zarya could help me with being 2 ahead of my team, since she has similar aiming style but lacks mobility necessary to push like a retard. Oh man, John. I think you'd do pretty well. I'm platinum. Let me tell you something, Jayne. I've seen some real shitty ultimates. Oh, I know. My favorite are ultimate fiestas, where people use like 10 or 12 ultimates in a fight. Those are so much fun. What do you think of Shanghai's new acquisitions? Will they finally get a win this stage? I think their first win is going to be this stage. Maybe not series win, but I don't know. I their best chance is definitely going to be against Dallas. Their best chance is definitely going to be winning against Dallas. Overwatch is on sale right now. Ain't that convenient timing? Look at that. I have no idea how to play this map, by the way. So advice on that in general would be great too. When we're fucking it up, absolutely. Mind talking about team tactics in Blizzard World? Man, the first point is kind of like the defenders should either be holding on the Griffin ride if they've got like an Orisa Torva or Orisa Bastion or something. But other than that, you basically want to be holding by the point and then be kind of being able to rotate left or right depending on where the attackers come from. Did you see the clip of Dreamcasper communicating with Gaguri in Korean? I saw the headline, but I didn't actually click on it myself. I did see the bunny trade. Anyway, let's get to watching. Let's get to watching.
Ready to move.
Bottom left.
Main choke is
So you've got a 4-stack, so there's no excuse for the comp being shit, right?
just aids.
Shoot down.
It is not my preference to see to matters personally, but I will see them done.
Okay. Honestly, not that bad. Could be worse. Certainly pretty good for Plat. Okay. So you're running the Reinhardt and the D.Va. So anybody kind of knows that I'm not a huge fan of Rein D.Va comps because they don't synergize really well together. And the only ever time that I enjoy a shield and a D.Va is when you're running on maps like Gibraltar, where there's a choke or a corner that you need to hold, as well as high ground nearby that you need to contest. And honestly, Blizzworld actually falls into one of those categories. So approaching, you either go through the main choke or you go through the Vikings Lost and Found. And both of those have really long sight lines onto the defenders if they're holding Griffin Ride. So yeah, having the Rhine here is really good because main choke, there's either Lost and Found or main. And then after you've gone through like past statue, you either have to go left or right to the point. And again, they're very narrow chokes that Reinhardt can entirely block off. So the Reinhardt's very useful here, but there's also a ton of high ground by Griffin, behind the point, by the boat, and on the left side. So the Ryan D.Va here is actually pretty decent. So not going to complain about that. The Moira is good because you've got two beefy tanks here, the D.Va and the Reinhardt, and if they play together, both of them are going to get that piercing heal. You've got the Zenyatta, who can help the D.Va kind of burst people down if they're off on their own. You can drop a Discord on the like a soldier who's on a lone high ground, drop a Harmony on your D.Va. D.Va goes, murders the soldier, rip him. And then you can also have the soldier who's just going to benefit off of things in his line of sight being discorded. The Reaper is slightly out of place here. But what it is going to prevent is essentially anything actually winning your tank lineup. So your tank lineup is relatively weak comparatively. Like if they had a Ryan Zarya, they'll beat your Ryan. And if they have Winston D.Va, they're going to beat your backline because your Reinhardt can't peel nearly as easily. However, the Reaper is going to help kind of fortify the main line against any sort of frontline tanks that the opponents have, as well as disincentivizing the dive onto your backline. So if your Reaper flanks, it's not going to work out and the comp's going to be a little bit weaker. But if your Reaper actually plays with the team, kind of assisting the front line and pressing forward with his high damage and threatening any dive tanks from killing specifically your Zenyatta and your soldier, it might work out. But let's see.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Attack commencing. Capture objective A.
So going Vikings where the shield's going to be really useful.
Killer! Killer! Killer!
D.Va D-Mac. Lucio. Sombra.
Bailing out.
Oh shit, I shouldn't have walked forward.
It's just 3. Get that or get out.
Be right back.
So let's take a look at what they're running.
Be right back.
So they're running. What are they running? Holy smokes! They're running Orisa D.Va, which is a little bit different. They're running Ana and Lucio, so two completely different supports from you, and a Sombra here. So they're gonna have a lot higher damage in that you've both got soldiers here, but your Reaper can't actually contest them when they're holding Griffin. And then they have their Sombra who can, hack your tanks as well. So your tank line is going to be weaker. And you don't have a Lucio that can actually kind of push past this choke really quickly. And they also have the Lucio, so even if you do kind of like push past the choke, they can reposition here. So what's going wrong here is twofold. First, that you're going to be forced into a tank engagement here where you're going to lose at range. Like you very much value the close range with the Reaper, whereas they've got these nice long range heroes with the Ana and the Soldier. And since they have an Orisa instead of a Reinhardt, if you are caught in this battle where there's any sort of gap between the two teams, the Orisa is going to be able to contribute to offensively spamming down your tanks, but your Rein can't actually fight back against the Orisa here. So they've got a surprisingly good composition against you, but especially since you have to worry about the Sombra actually hacking your Reinhardt or your D.Va in order to keep them alive. So I'd like to see you guys, you're not going to win the fight at range, especially when they have an Ana and a Lucio. They're going to have enough healing that just your Soldier and your Zenyatta shooting at them from range isn't going to work. So there's kind of two ways that you can go about this. Instead of going through the Lost and Found on the left side, so let's take a look at this. Instead of going through the Lost and Found on the left side, close enough. So this is like main choke. This is the main choke. This is the Viking Lost and Found that you came from, and they're positioned up here. So your two options, knowing that you lose at range, like anytime there's a range between the two compositions, you're going to lose. Just because they have more healing and they have more range damage and spam. So you can try and move quickly past this choke while always facing your shield to Griffin. Like if you're here, your Reinhardt shield's here. As you're turning the corner, you're in as your team runs behind you, and then you kind of like back out. But the other way is that you have to be looking for other ways where you can get directly on top of them, where you can actually get your Reaper and put him to good use. So main is going to have the same problem because they're going to have these long sightlines on you. So what you could do is go right up it through the flank and then try and close the distance to them. So always trying to be using the flanks when you are using a Reaper, and especially when you're using a Reaper and they have the advantage of the long sight lines. Use the flanks where you can get on top of them with the least amount of, the shortest sight lines so that you don't take spam damage. So those are really your options here. But if you're not going full dive, then you basically need to ignore them and then force them to retreat back onto the point where you'll have a more even fight, or take the fight to them by going up Griffin. Hopefully that wasn't too convoluted of an explanation. Wait, what? Why is there a whole bunch of jabateds in chat? What did I miss? Effect has moved to Dynasty? Am I being jabated? Is chat jabating me? I think chat's jabating me. I don't see effect leaving fuel. That would be... Wouldn't that be suicidal for fuel if they lost effect?
Back.
That'd be really dumb.
Oh, this was
Really
close.
dumb.
Time to young to die.
Come on, give me some.
Yeah, hold up. We have 2 more.
Would it not be better for them to dash to points so they can bring the fight to them since they are a close range comp? Yeah, it would be better, but they're not running Lucio. So I don't think they can actually make it past them on the low ground without Lucio, especially against a Sombra who's going to hack the Rhine or the D.Va or something like that. Especially with the enemy team on the high ground having the Lucio, they're going to be able to reposition faster so that your rotation isn't as effective. And you, without the Lucio, means you're going to be spending a lot longer getting spammed out. So yeah, I agree that like dashing to point and making them fight there would be the correct option if you had a Lucio, which they don't.
Somber behind. Somber's dead.
Summer's dead.
Nice.
Need healing.
Whoa.
I'm sorry, T. I'm sorry.
Oh, your Orisa dropped. You get the enemy Orisa dropped.
D.Va
D.Va,
1.
D.Va D-Max.
On Orisa.
Baby D.Va dead.
Okay, so let's be honest here. They straight up gifted this to you. The Sombra 1v6 EMP'd, and then your Reinhardt charged just suicidally into them, and then your Orisa gave up the high ground. Yay!
Soldiers on the point.
Sombra's being a bitch as usual.
Pro tip. You can actually use your D.Va mech for cover. So if your D.Va mech is exploding here, then the mech is a solid object that cannot be shot through. It can, like, enemies can interact with it, like with a hook. And the Brigida's whip. This is a fun tip. Brigida's like whip flail thing can, if D.Va mech is being launched at an angle like this, if you hit it with the flail from Brigida, it drops straight down. So this is an interactable object for the enemies, which means that if you bombed, and then you kind of like ran away while the enemy soldier was in visor, and he kind of just stood around to die to it. But you could have stood basically right behind the mech to be safe. So ult and then just like hide right behind it. You'll have a moment of weakness where you, after you hit Q to remech, but chances are he won't be able to kill you because he'll be, well, should be hiding from the D.Va mech explosion. So don't always run away from your own mech. This isn't like Season 2 where mech actually hurts you. You can use mech as cover if you don't think you can retreat from the thing you bombed. Can you halt a D.Va bomb? I don't see why you wouldn't be able to.
Soldier dead.
Probably not, though. Actually, no, probably not, because it's like it's an object. It's not a player, and halt only interacts with player. No, I don't think you could halt it. I don't know the full list of interactions with D.Va mech, like, perfectly. Like, but yeah, there's some real, like, I think you can Earth Shatter it. You can Earth Shatter mech. I don't know, the list of interactions with, like, the exploding D.Va mech is really fucking weird. You can charge D.Va Bomb. I'm pretty sure you can hammer it. Can you shield bash D.Va Bomb? Man, there's a lot of... I guess I shouldn't have brought it up without knowing all of the interactions with exploding mech. Note to self, I'm actually going to write that down to test every single possible interaction with D.Va mech. But yeah, it's just a few little... Yeah, you can't halt it because it's an object, not a person, and halt only works on perfect. You see a charged D.Va Bomb later in this VOD? Yes! What will shattering a D.Va Bomb do anyway? Stops it in place. So if it's boosting across the ground and you shatter it, it just stops in place and falls over. And then explodes in that spot.
What's up, guys?
He's behind somewhere, being a bitch. On point, being a bitch.
Here, D.Va. Get behind. Tagging D.Va.
So anytime an Orisa uses her barrier like that, Orisa's crit box is fucking massive, okay? It's just huge. And if Orisa places her shield, like shield dancing Orisa is hard to deal with, but if Orisa is here and her shield is here, and you place yourself right here as D.Va, she can't get to her shield to protect herself, and you will win the fight if you just put all of your bullets like right into her face, especially since while she's shooting, she has reduced movement. So you kind of... The Orisa was here, and then the rest of her team was here, and you put yourself between the Orisa and the D.Va, and the Orisa turned around and actually started firing at you to demech you. So anytime an Orisa places her shield, she has committed to this location, and characters who get value from basically headshots, huge value to get right up and close with D.Va, so that are with Orisa, so that you can just brutalize her here. So yeah, instead of kind of like going past the Orisa, I would have gone into the shield and just smashed her head hitbox repeatedly here. Audio is not nice at the... What? What happened to the audio? I didn't change anything. Hopefully it fixes itself. Oh.
3-1.
It's huge!
Nice shatter. Lucio. Soldier high ground. He's done.
Objective A captured. Escort the...
Maybe I'll walk you the payload if you guys want to poke.
I cast this forth.
Yeah, I'm gonna poke for
Number's low.
Rena.
Oh shit, you could destroy those?
Yeah.
The more you know, dude.
Nice, nice, nice.
There's someone in the right room, I think it's Sombra.
Do you have a backside?
Pretty dangerous getting into mech there, but it worked out.
Sombra behind
Somber
you.
behind us and shit.
Yeah, so you're just aiming center of mass, and like your crosshair is massive, but just aim up a little bit. D.Va loves headshots, especially at close range. At long range, fall off. You know, you can't, like, the head hitbox isn't large enough, but just aim up just a little bit.
Number's low. Ana's behind.
Good D-mech on the D.Va.
D.Va falling down.
Ana's dead.
Yeah, you have to be really careful about getting. You have to be really careful about getting demeched, or not demeched, hacked by Sombra, because a single clip of Sombra, if you're inside of her fall off range, is 480 damage, and she her spread is small enough that she's going to be able to land pretty much every single shot on you. and her fall off is such that she can do it from a pretty significant range away. So especially when you're playing against Sombra, you want to be playing a lot closer to your team so that you can protect them if they get hacked. And if you get hacked when you're kind of like, well, first of all, you don't want to be out in the open because if you get hacked, you're going to be all on your own. She can interrupt your boosts. She can shut off your defense matrix and your micro missiles. Just not a really great thing to be being as aggressive when the opponent has a Sombra. Hey, Beaky. Karki showed you can flashbang mech. That's awesome. Is there a magic trick to not getting hacked? Just playing with your team, where people can cover for you. Compression problems, eh?
I got
Nice,
you.
nice, nice, nice.
Nice, that was sick.
Oh shit, dude, that was fucking scary.
Forward shield.
D.Va's behind, she's half health. You demacked.
He's on. I'm dead.
You have no healers right now, you have no healers. I'm back spawned, or it's gonna spawn forward.
Everyone, heal up.
Standing, yeah, Jet.
Friendly zone is back spawned, I'll be there in a minute.
And yeah, chat's mentioning it here and there, but your defense matrix, I don't want to mention defense matrix when it's kind of like a minor error here and there, but defense matrix has a delay after you've used it before it starts charging back up again, and before you can reactivate it. So you're flashing it to catch like minor damage and whatnot, but you just want to be a little bit more mindful of your defense matrix. And if I see, you know, a critical error with your defense matrix, I'll point it out. But just so far, you know, it's not the worst thing in the world to take like 50 damage as you're retreating, especially if your defense matrix is low, because if things happen like, you know, if the last example we would have seen was you could have defense matrixed the mini D.Va, just like absolutely make sure that she didn't get any, you know, kills while she was suiciding, or that she can't get back into mech. But yeah, so I'll just be paying a little bit closer attention to your defense matrix usage on this third point here.
Self-destruct sequence.
I have ulti if you get a big shatter.
My ultimate is ready.
Fat chatter, ready? Charge this bitch.
That's a charge, not a shatter.
Not fat.
Not fat.
I got the water though.
Dead push, get it out.
I like the call. Whoever made that call. Is that you? Good call, regardless. Your Ryan's doing it again! I love it. I don't actually love it,
Really want.
but like if you're gonna be playing this style of Reinhardt, get the man
Junkrat's behind
Zarya.
us, Junkrat's behind us. He's on the little side, in the middle.
What did you try and do there? What were you trying to do?
Junkrat's behind us, He's on the little side.
We're being told Junkrat's behind us, and I think you're obeying the calls, but it does not sound to me like Junkrat's behind us.
Middle.
Yeah, Junkrat was not behind. That's kind of weird. Yeah. I think there's some sort of, I don't know what it is. I'm not compressing it myself. Sounds like a fishbowl. I'll try and fix VOD audio after the first half. So yeah, let's go back, because you were out of defense matrix entirely, but I didn't actually catch what you used it on.
Junkrat's behind us, He's on the little side, in the middle.
Yeah, so right here, right? You're boosting forward and you're just using defense matrix off instinct. So you go to defense matrix of Fire Strike, which is honestly a really, really strong use of defense matrix, because you don't want the Rhine to actually get hammer down. But then after that, when you're boosting up to the high ground, you're just holding defense matrix.
Little side.
So you dropped it there, and then you let go of it, but then you reactivate it as you try boosting to the high ground. So like there was no damage at all there, and you were activating it. Then you activated it there again when there was no damage. And here you tried to activate your defense matrix when she started activating micros, but you didn't have any defense matrix left, so now you're out. Yeah, so now you can't eat something that actually would have mattered, D.Va's micro missiles.
Taking the reset.
Can you defense matrix with
reset,
tire?
reset.
No, you cannot. It's a really popular tactic to actually defense matrix an allied tire as you're pushing in, because then people on the enemy team can't kill it. But an opposing tire, no, you can't defense matrix that.
Get through this.
Oh, watch out, there's a...
McCree's somewhere. I'll see where he's at. Ryan discorded.
Yeah! Man, your Ryan actually canceled their hammer. That's awesome.
Oh shit, nice.
We were behind you guys.
I liked the L bomb. It was a little bit late. You kind of boosted it and then you went up to actually drop the bomb, but it was a little bit late there. And they the enemy team had pushed a little bit farther forward. So I liked the idea of the bomb, but I think the technique to pull it off was a little bit late on the actual upswing. And it also puts you pretty far into enemy territory. So you're like, if they had a little bit focus on you, you probably would have died to a better team.
Reaper Wraith, Reaper Wraith.
I will.
Yes, they all hid in there.
Double
It still worked. It just wasn't the best bomb it could have been. And your Ryan's back.
On the Ana.
Nice. Its destination.
Nice.
So against singular targets like that,
Win.
Okay, so against singular targets, like that Reinhardt, for example, D.Va is pretty mobile and very tanky, and if there's like a singular Reinhardt who's holding his shield up, instead of being in front of him, you basically have two options. A Reinhardt with his shield up will actually retreat slower than D.Va just mashing her cannons into that person's face. And the other thing is that there's nothing really wrong with boosting through the Reinhardt and going behind him, especially if he's alone. Like, you don't want to be shooting the Reinhardt from behind when he has the rest of his team with him, but at the very end there, instead of like being with your team and shooting him, you could have like boosted through and then turned around behind him and then microed him in the ass, and it just kills them a lot more efficiently. So the two things you can do against a Reinhardt, if he's just more or less alone and you're just in the cleanup phase, instead of just like shooting his shield until it breaks and then killing him, either go right up in front of his shield, just don't fire until you get between him and his shield, and then walk forward with your micro missiles and your fusions, and you can kill him. Like, if he's shield hopping, you may want to just use fusions, because not micros, because if you're walking forward, right, our speed is slowed by our fusion cannons, but not slowed by our micros. So if he's shield hopping, you can use your micros, but if he's hard shielding, you can just walk in through his shield, shoot him in the face between the shield and him, and then if there's nobody behind him, boost behind him and shoot him in the ass to set up that nice crossfire and kill him quicker. Yeah, micros don't reduce speed. It's pretty nice. Do you feel flexing too much or on too many heroes can inadvertently hurt your capabilities as a player? Yes, I absolutely think so. Where's the crosshair? I just turned it off.
Good push, guys.
Nice, guys.
If it's during cleanup, isn't it better to kill him slower to stagger further than to quickly kill? This was at the very end of the point where killing him would have actually won the point. But the only time that you would not want to, basically, if he's contesting the payload or on a point, you would do that. But yeah, if you're getting distance and he's just kind of like staggering off the point, then you could, I suppose, stagger him a little bit longer. But yeah, that's extremely situational. Hey, hey, Stealth Shadow, good to see you.
Score 3-0. Switching sides. Prepare your defenses. Select your hero.
Did that fix anything with the VOD audio? Building off your last point, is it okay to play within like a class, like playing off tank and main tank? That's what most people do, yes, absolutely. How do you effectively play Winston when the enemy has a Reaper? Switch heroes or just try to avoid the Reaper? I generally try and avoid the Reaper. And if you attack him with a D.Va or something, you can usually force the Wraith out before he actually has any ability to damage you. So, you know, if you're playing like solo queue and don't have the support, you dive where he's not. But if you're attacking with anyone, normally you can actually deal with a Reaper. It's only when a Reaper is well supported and they're all like playing together that it becomes extremely difficult to deal with as Winston. How OP do you think Mei is right now? I don't think Mei's OP at all. She's probably a little bit underpowered.
Do you guys want to hold up here or down?
Let's hold down.
Down right if we can.
That's what I was thinking.
This way they either have to come around the corner from the low ground and
Yeah, so holding on the point here and then just like seeing where they are and being able to rotate left or right as necessary to kind of meet their advance is a pretty good plan. If you are going to be holding on a location, left is better because it gives you a nicer sightline into Viking Lost and Found compared to holding the right side where they can actually get up a lot closer to you without actually entering your line of sight. We really need help bad on defense because we got completely wrecked, both me and as our group. Okay, let's take a look. What do you think about the coming Reaper and Mei buffs? Reaper buff is a bit much and his speed is pretty ridiculous, but Mei buff is nice, I guess, but I don't think it goes far enough.
to us, straight through the
It's more like a
statue
quality
into
of
us,
life
or
and
take
pretty
Griffin
niche
and
change.
pull that to the point.
Yeah, so you want to be giving your soldier better sightlines, so I'd be holding on the left side of the point instead of the right here.
5, 4, 3.
What if the Reaper is playing close to their backline most of the time? What do you do as Winston? Like, if the Reaper's in the backline, he ain't doing shit. Just leave him there and focus their tanks.
2, 1.
Drink water? Yes.
Attackers incoming. Defend objective A. I will.
I think I just nearly killed one of them already.
Care what I make?
I like the enthusiasm, but D.Va's spread is so massive and her fall off so significant that you're maybe doing 1 or 2 damage. So I'm not sure if you're actually expecting your guns to do any damage here or if you're just doing it because there's no harm or no foul to actually shooting, but I just want to point out that it's doing literally nothing. The only thing that like spraying people from like 30-40 meters away from D.Va will do is prevent regen of shields, prevent Mercy's regeneration, as well as actually give them a health bar. Because remember, damaging people makes their health bar show up. So unless you're curious as to what their health is, or you want to prevent their health regeneration, shooting from this regen does pretty much nothing. What's the best comps right now? Still dive.
Widow. Okay.
Routing towers, forward barrier.
Genji discarded.
You're
Genji
separating.
discarded.
You're separating yourself from your Reinhardt.
Don't get caught.
Pull back, Ryan.
And yeah, poor communication here, right? You've fallen back, but your Reinhardt has not, and the enemy has a Widowmaker. I'm not sure if you scouted that or not, but the enemy has a Widowmaker, and your counter to their Widowmaker is basically any sort of long-range hero, like a Zenyatta or a soldier, sitting behind a Reinhardt shield, so the Widowmaker can't actually kill them. Your Zenyatta is exposed, your Reinhardt separated. This is going to go pretty poorly, pretty fast.
Activated.
Genji on site.
Jumping a Widowmaker without micro missiles is going to be extremely difficult. Also, you jumped the Widowmaker. I'm not sure if she had used grapple or not, but I'm pretty sure you didn't check regardless. Yeah, so she's up there, right? So if you dive her here, she has grapple, and diving a Widowmaker is actually a lot harder than people make it out to be. You know, people in ranked are like, oh, they've got a Widowmaker, just go Winston, lol, forehead. Like, yes, Winston is a counter to Widow, but not nearly as good as people imagine. Because Winston has to jump the Widowmaker in a predictable arc in which the Winston is probably going to take 300 damage. And if the Winston does jump the Widowmaker before the Widowmaker has used her grappling hook, she's just going to reposition and the Winston's going to end up in the middle of nowhere and die. So if you see her use grapple, that is an opportunity to dive her. Just having her here and then you diving her with no backup is not going to do anything, especially with your micro missiles off cooldown.
Genji on site.
Buzz.
Mecha activated.
We need something to get that Widow off the siege tank.
Yeah.
This is my will. Objective lost.
I appreciate the enthusiasm with eating that orb. So yeah, you lost that because you got split. Poor communication. Your Reinhardt was still up. Your Zenyatta was exposed. Widowmaker headshot. And it just fell apart from there.
Time to raise my hand.
Time on that Widow like your high ground or something.
Widow sights are up.
Matrix activated. Routing towards forward barrier.
Genji. Yeah.
So here is just a little tip for your Winston player. Hopefully he's watching. Is that dive is meant to be very, very quick and, a confident attack. And your Winston had kind of like half jumped in and then dropped his bubble. And then the enemy D.Va reacted by basically breaking Winston's bubble. And then you used your defense matrix to assist the Winston. But here, he's still got like a significant amount of time left on his bubble cooldown, and he is re-engaged. And this time, he doesn't even have your defense matrix to assist him with. And like you got the kill onto the Genji, but your DPS is still way in the back and not in a position where they can help your Winston. So dive is one of the hardest compositions. It is simultaneously the most powerful composition in the game and the hardest to pull off with coordination. So if you have a dive fail like it did, your Winston went in, you bubbled, bubble broke, you defense matrixed, you retreated successfully. Stabilizing doesn't just mean with health, but it also means with cooldowns. You can't re-engage until Winston has his bubble back. So your Reinhardt is very aggressive and likes forcing engagements, and he likes forcing engagements when your team overall is at a disadvantage, and not just in numbers, but in resources. Like, it's not just an individual being dead that is an advantage or a disadvantage. Having no defense matrix, having no bubble, not having your DPS in a position where they can contribute to the fight, these are all disadvantages that your team is suffering from despite being a man up. So yes, their Genji is dead and you have 6 people, but you're still going to lose this fight.
Come back here, man.
Really nice DMAC though.
Genji in the back.
Disregard, you pop the coalescence. You're at least
Thank you,
still
Mark.
in the running.
Get through this.
So here again, your Winston is, you're an off tank, not a front tank or a main tank. So you should be supporting the main tank's actual decisions and his actions here. Now you're playing as if you were with a Reinhardt or as if you were a Reinhardt or a Winston or something like that, but you don't have an off tank supporting you. You are the off tank. So you have 2 options here. You can call this fight lost, or you could call it a hyper aggro hold and keep fighting and call for your team to stay with you. Or if you're going to be waiting for your Winston to come back, then you'll need to be stabilizing and resetting and not trying to hold as 5.
That Widow's don't poke the corner, guys. Get to the back. Get back to the corner.
So now your Winston's back, but you've lost your Moira because she had to basically be exposed trying to heal you. So dive has basically 2 modes: murdering everything and hiding like a coward. And there's none of this, like, you kind of like sit in this poke and posture stage for way too long. It's going to be not as bad as it could be because you have a Moira, but dive tanks should not require the same amount of healing that like a Reinhardt needs in order to actually be successful here. So less of this kind of like wishy-washy in the middle and more, being in a position, waiting to your 6, picking an engagement. We're engaging here on this right now, 3, 2, 1, let's go. Because if you get into this kind of like wishy-washy thing, especially if they run anything that isn't dive tanks of their own, you're just going to get fucking rolled.
Widow to defend her team.
Just don't pick her.
Your Winston died again. You get out here. And here the same sort of thing. So you have two options. Your option is to retreat entirely so that none of you get staggered, or recognize that you are losing the fight and die on the payload here. So there's nothing wrong with getting staggered. The only errors with getting staggered are when you die off the payload here. So you retreated off the payload and your backline is running away, but you've got 3 more seconds until your boosters come back off cooldown and you can keep retreating, and both of their dive tanks are advancing. So you're probably going to get staggered while the enemy is getting distance on the payload, and this is like worst case scenario. So you're not losing because of any mechanical skills, you're losing the overall objective because you're failing at payload management here. So you're demacked, you're staggered off the payload. Your Winston is staggered off the payload. You are staggered off the payload. They're gonna blade. Your Reaper commits ults, gets the Genji. And did they back off? Looks like they backed off. But they're still getting distance on the payload here.
Well, it's kind of...
Your Reaper got their Moira, that's awesome.
I don't want to go off that.
You need to go save your Reaper though. Nice.
D.Va D-Max.
So your Reaper's ult plus a
behind
flank
us
kill
above.
actually allows you to recontest the payload. That was really good. Risky. I certainly won't lie. It was risky, but it was good enough. So again, you're diving the Widow before she used grapple, and alone. It's not going to result in a kill. Even if Mercy wasn't in Valkyrie, that wouldn't have resulted in a kill. Oh, the main tank isn't in your stack. Right. Good dodge on that bomb. How much damage did you take there? What? Did I lose track of your health? Oh, it was yeah. It was a Widow shot plus a right click that did it. I like demecking out of sight so that you don't get killed by the Widowmaker.
Monkey discarded.
He's on backline. So the main reason they're winning isn't because you're being outskilled or anything. The main reason that they're winning is because they've got 2 primary healers, and then you have a Zenyatta who's not being protected, and they have a Widowmaker and a Genji. So the Widowmaker and the Genji is basically killing your Zenyatta as much as possible, so you're not getting any opportunity of discords. But even when your Zenyatta is alive here, you're not following discorded calls, or you're following the discord, or the monkey is following discord, or the Reaper is trying to kill something. But you really, really need to focus fire to burn through Moira and Mercy heals. What is that like? It's a lot. It's like half a transcendence. So discord is absolutely necessary, but either you need to be a little bit farther back protecting your Zenyatta so that you can keep the discords together, or your front line, your Reaper and your Winston, need to focus discorded targets a lot better. So your Reaper's not doing bad, but I'm actually surprised that he's not doing more to the enemy tanks. So is it okay to dive Widowmaker on her high ground even though she has hook? I think it's still better than let her shoot so freely. Like if you're doing it to deny the high ground, that's different. But if you're doing it to actually just try and get the kill, it's not really going to work out. Because especially if you just get them off the high ground here, you can't sit there forever. Right? So if this is a piece of high ground and the Widowmaker's right here, and you dive up to actually attack her, if she just like gives up the high ground and then you pursue, she's going to grapple back to the high ground. Or she'll just stay on the high ground and keep shooting until you give the high ground, and then she'll kind of grapple back up there. If she does grapple back up, you can still boost back up. But in terms of like the actual seconds wasted during the fight, it's going to be too much. So attacking the Widowmaker alone is just a losing proposition for a Winston or a D.Va. You definitely want to be doing it together or countering her in other ways.
The payload has reached the checkpoint.
Your safety is my primary concern.
Yeah, like if you still had the Reinhardt that you did on the first point, one of the things that you can do really well with a Zenyatta and a Soldier is just pressure the Widowmaker. You know, you may not get the kill, but you're going to prevent her from being able to sit in any position where she can get value. So you're trying to engage while people are still getting staggered, but like your team isn't with you here. So they're still getting distance here. Like you're trying to commit to it. You can shield that. Oh no! Oh no! That's unfortunate. You dropped the shield in front of the bomb.
I'm still to watch this.
That's hilarious. Good intention though, whatever. Like their healing is just so ridiculous. Like the fights that you do take here, like this is a perfect example. The fights that you do take here, the reason that you can't kill anything is because they're just out healing you. They're just straight up out healing you, and then their Widowmaker is like it's just you're just like punching a sponge. Like the sponge is like bleh, bleh. It doesn't care. It doesn't care at all. You can throw a baseball at just like a pool full of sponges. Like whatever, I don't care. And then you're just giving the Widowmaker. You're not like you are contesting her, but you're not contesting in a way that matters because she's staying alive. And then the Widowmaker has so much time to find heads that your team is dying very slowly because your Widowmaker is just getting chances to find heads, and there's no real way for you to kill them because you're not having the target focus, and your Zenyatta is not staying alive for you to actually use Discord to burn through their heals. So yeah, like a Reinhardt would be good. Specifically so that you could actually zone out their Widowmaker. You know, you would actually counter their tanks here. If Orisa's not bad at it, certainly, because Orisa can also put up more ranged spam damage, but it is a mobile shield. It can be difficult to use to actually counter Widowmaker since she can kind of fan flanks and use corners around the shield itself. But yeah, if you are going to be playing Orisa, you want to play a lot farther back. The problem with playing a lot farther back from the team is that, again, they're just getting a lot of payload for free here.
I really just can't do anything about the Widow if she's sitting in the
Shield tank, triple tank.
Yeah, I'll trust this.
The payload is approaching its destination.
Oh, sorry, go back. So the question is, how do we contest Widows in ways that matter when Mercy can deal with 1 to 2 people? So, yeah, like if you dive on the Widowmaker and you can't kill her, then you've wasted resources, you've probably put yourself out of position. But let's think about this scenario here. There's this high ground, and there's a Widowmaker standing on the high ground, and then there's the rest of the enemy team. What you want to do is you want to deal with her in a way that you can also use to deal with the rest of the enemy team. So if you are a Reinhardt or an Orisa, instead of standing, because if you stand here with Reinhardt and your Zenyatta is here, then the Widowmaker has a clean line of fire onto the Zenyatta. He's right there. So instead of doing that, instead of kind of holding right up close to them, you want to be playing farther back. You want to be playing farther back with a Reinhardt like here and a Zenyatta here, so that the sight line that the Widowmaker has cannot hit the Zenyatta. But then if you have a Soldier and a Zenyatta, which you did, you had Soldier and Zenyatta, so you had a 76 and a Zen. So right here, you don't have to kill the Widowmaker, you just have to make her a non-factor. So if she shows herself, the combination of Discord, orbs with no fall off, the actual left clicks from Soldier should force this Widowmaker to take cover because you have this Reinhardt. But whenever the Widowmaker is not in a position where she can be pressured, you can use that Zen and that 76 to actually damage the enemy team. So Preferably, the best way to deal with a Widowmaker is deal with her in ways that those resources can be committed to dealing with the enemy team when the Widowmaker is not currently a threat, not in position, or not alive. So, playing farther back with a shield tank, 76 and a Zenyatta or something like that, you can pressure the Widow so that she can't actually be in her position, and even when she is in her position, she can't stay there for long and can't find a target. But what was happening here was we had this high ground with Widowmaker. We had on the ground the enemy team, and we're just going to call them NME. That'll be shorthand for enemy, NME. And then you were fighting them basically here with your Winston D.Va, D.Va, and then your DPS were doing something. But then you had your supports a little bit farther back, and they had so much healing that you there couldn't really do much except prevent them from walking forward. You lacked in the heal department, and Winston and D.Va, unless they kind of coordinated dive onto an exposed target with Discord or something like that, aren't going to directly get kills their own. So you were just slowly losing the tank battle because you had less support, and then in the meantime, the Widowmaker was just getting free shots and free damage, and the Genji was also just fucking around in the back line, following up on any body shots that the Widowmaker got. So, yeah, because you weren't actually able to get any kills, they were just slowly winning the tank war, in the meantime, while their Widowmaker and their Genji was just taking apart your backline. So, but if we're going to be talking about the things that you could use to actually improve the most, especially as you're playing when you're playing as a stack, the thing that you can do to improve the most, just from looking at this VOD, is going to be probably your payload management. And we saw it especially on second point. Like, you lost first point because of a mistake. Like, you tried to rotate, but you left your Reinhardt behind. It exposed your Zenyatta. He got picked off, and things just went bad from there. So the first point, not really a big deal. It was a mistake. It happens. But on second point and on third point, the real big issue was payload management. So if we're looking at the second point here, when they come around the bend like this, we'll just call this like the second point. It looks approximately like this, right? So the payload was here when you lost your Winston, and then you boosted back as D.Va, and then your backline was here. And then what had happened is basically they moved up to pursue after you tried to retreat. So that immediately means that the payload is starting to move. So you got demeched here and you got killed here, and then somebody else on your team got killed here, and the enemy was pushing them all the way to here, where at this point, at like this point right here, the enemy Genji used Blade and you countered with Reaper. So Reaper got 1-2 and then was actually able to push back up. So because of this, you were actually able to stop the payload in this location right here. However, if your backline and you hadn't retreated, if you had just kind of fought on the payload, then they wouldn't have been able to move the payload until every single last one of you basically died. So if you had been here, and when your Winston died, you'd been like, okay, looks like we're fighting to the last man. The point of fighting on the payload isn't to try and win the fight. It's to try and make sure that they don't get any distance for free. They have to earn payload distance with your death. And that will stall them out. So it'll take time for them to kill you. Like, it took time for them to kill you here, but that time could be bought in payload time. You know, if your backline realizes it's lost and moves up to stall on the payload as well, then after you're all dead, and only after you're dead, the 10-second timer will start for your respawns, and they'll start moving. And you should be able to recontest earlier. Because if your Reaper hadn't turned things around here, you probably would have lost all of Streets phase without a single fight. So I cannot stress enough how important it is during a lost team fight, especially on payload. If you don't have the option to retreat and regroup, just die on the payload and prevent it from moving. It's really quite valuable. Would the job then for a tank to be a rectangle man, a horse robot, and just trust Zen soldier to murder everything? Yeah, that's why I hate playing Reinhardt against Widowmakers, because I go Mr. Rectangle Man. It sucks, but that is indeed how you have to do it. So, yeah, you just play Rectangle Man against Widowmaker. It sucks. But it's not really the worst thing ever, because they have no frontline pressure. So if they have playing Widowmaker, unless they're playing some ridiculous comp, your shield should outlast the opponents. In OWL, you always see them picking Widow to counter enemy Widow quite a lot. Yeah, because it's probably one of the best ways. Like, Widowmaker's such a bullshit hero, we'll be completely honest. So hard to deal with her no fall off, super long sight. Any map with like really long sight lines, honestly, the best way to counter a Widow is just with a better Widowmaker. And even then, like offense Widow has a huge advantage over defense Widow. But yeah, like picking defense Widow into offense Widow to try and counter her can be shooting yourself in the foot. Yeah, but this way is somewhat not really viable most of the time. If you're in plat, you're actually assuming your teammates understand positioning too many times. I've been support DPS, just get out of cover and get killed by Widow. You know, so many things can be solved by the simplest of communication. Like if you are playing Reinhardt and you say, okay, let's hold here, don't pike out, they have a Widowmaker. Like if they don't listen to you after you've used comms, well, whatever. But, you know, you have to play the game, not for the elo you're at, but for the elo you want. And if you want your teammate to play like they're not plat, like they're diamond instead, you need to be dropping those knowledge bombs on your teammates. So it's just a little bit of direction in a team or in a game, if you know the answer, can go a long way. What about the tank DPS combo they had? Dive tanks and slow long range DPS, Reaper Soldier. Like keeping the Reaper after you swapped off Reinhardt was obviously a little bit strange, but I wasn't going to talk about it. Like the Reaper itself, if you still want to be frontlining, but he has no mobility, and you kept the Winston kept very aggressively diving in and ending up in a fight against their tanks being supported by double primary healer before the Reaper showed up. So I don't think I needed to point out why it was wrong, but or suboptimal, I suppose, not wrong. How long will you stream today? I think I've got 3. We'll see. We'll see. Depends on how I'm feeling. At least 3 more hours. Rectangle man means shield Rhine only? Yes, that is correct. Our second defense is our shitty round 2 of trying to hold again. We give it a go. That's really probably more help than our second attack round. Okay, I'll watch the second defense round then. Communicating in plat is like trying to tell a dog how to play the game. The 75% of the time they're like, don't tell me what to do. Well, play for that 30% of the time then. 30% is better than 0%. If it only works 30% of the time, it's better than it not working at all because you didn't attempt it. Is the giveaway global? Yes. Yes, it is. Oh, CH524 has subscribed with Prime. Thank you so much, my friend. Fire Hunter Live donating $5. Would you rather fight a horse-sized duck or a duck-sized horse? Duck-sized horse? Sounds like I could just boot that thing into the next zip code. Ranger Burn 117, also with the tier 1 sub. Appreciate it, my friend. Why are people's egos in Diamond the size of Ron Jeremy's penis? Well, most people get to Diamond by hard carrying plat games. So once they get to Diamond, they still are stuck in the mentality that they need to hard carry Diamond to get to Masters, when that's a lot harder to do in Diamond than it is compared to plat. Okay. We're going to skip to the second defense round. Where is it? There it is. You're running Roadhog or Orisa this time. I like it.
Your safety is my primary concern. I will simulate our upcoming mission to identify all possible outcomes.
I'm going to recommend that we hold in the boat up here.
This is a pretty good location. It's best in this location if you have like a Bastion or a Torbjorn, but this is a very good location to be in.
Just watch the angles from Griffins, because that's where, if they have that sniper again, that's where she's going to...
Yeah, so I love it that you're already talking about how to deal with the Pharah, how to deal with the Widowmaker, and Griffin is not a bad spot to hold, but the problem with Griffin is at some point you have to fall back to the point, so you've just kind of thought it through its logical conclusion, and you're starting off with holding on the point. I do like it. Can you do some analysis on solo queues? Please, please, please. Yep, absolutely. This is just a 4-stack. I think our next game is solo queue.
Gonna go.
Yeah, if they have the Widow, I think we should actually just drop straight down onto the point and make them contest. If they're not running...
What's the most effective way to call, shot call, like action position or something? It's usually just character location. If you die... so, like, character and locations are always good shot callouts, or shot calls. Well, callouts. They're not shot calls. They're callouts. But the other really important callout to give your team is if you see what are called universal cooldowns. So these are cooldowns that change how you actually attack, or like the matchups between that character changes. For example, if you're attacking a Roadhog, how you act against that Roadhog changes depending on if he has or has used Hook. Like if he has used Hook, he's basically 600 units of ult charge. If he still has Hook available to him, he has the ability to one-shot you. Those are two very different things. So calling out things that change how you would actually attack a character matter. McCree's Flashbang, Reaper's Wraith Form, May's Ice Block, Roadhog's Hook, Orisa's Fortify, boosters and leap for Winston and D.Va. If they actually attacked you aggressively, you can focus them down. So I think the two most important callouts to be made in solo queue, like ranked, is position and location of people who can be killed. So, if you see like a McCree on the left without his team, you'd be like, hey, McCree left side, let's kill him. And then he's dead. And then the second thing is if you see like the Roadhog use Hook or something like that, then, like if you're looking at a hero like a Reinhardt, for example, Reinhardt's Fire Strike doesn't really change how you 1v1 him. What's another example? What is another example? Like Pharah. Pharah's concussion or jump jet doesn't really apply to how you actually approach her, unless you're McCree. Like if you're McCree, you want to be knowing that if they have jump jet so that you can high noon them. But like even that is super niche. So like a Pharah has no universal cooldowns. And some cooldowns are situational. Some cooldowns will matter depending on your composition, and others will not. But Tracer no recall. McCree's roll doesn't matter. Moira's orb doesn't matter. Moira's fade super matters. Moira's fade super matters. But yeah, so two most important callouts that I do.
Widow and then Pharah. Then we'll react accordingly. But that's that Widow again. And then we'll just go straight onto the point and into that nest right before I fire that all.
Charge you that.
4, 3, 2.
Yeah, Zen has no universal cooldowns either.
Incoming. Defend objective A.
I like it that you have this nice Orisa shield and your soldier immediately stepped outside of it before we know if they have a Zen, or a Widow, rather.
Also running the Widow.
Yeah, pretty much all of Anna's cooldowns are universal.
Are we going on the point?
Yeah,
Need to get there.
Drop. Get the back corner.
You probably didn't need to drop since you had a Roadhog who could contest.
Bring them
Monkey Discord. D.Va fucking back. Zen, that's dead.
I'm dead. Don't know how that would have
No
been.
healers.
So you had this really nice plan, and then you immediately abandoned it for the low ground, which sucks. But oh well, what can you really do about that? You had like the double shotguns there, so if you were going to do this as you positioned to the high ground, you would have wanted to know if they were going left or going right, and then shielding that side. So you don't ever want to be directly on the middle of the point because that can be pincered. So if we're talking about this being the point here, you were holding in a good location here. And why is this a good location? Because if the enemy goes here, you've got this sightline. If the enemy goes here, you've got this sightline. You can kind of just like look. I keep forgetting that my face is in the way. So let's look at this being the point. So this is the point. If the enemy comes here and you're located here, we've got this nice sightline. If they go here, you just kind of look a little bit to your right. You've got this nice sightline. If you're holding on the point, then they can kind of pincer you, and you're reducing the amount of sightlines that you actually have before they get right up on top of you. Instead of holding behind the point, if you did want to rotate to the low ground, what you should have done, instead of being directly in the middle and all spread out, is you could be on the left here, because if they come up and meet you on the left, then you've got the stronger tanks, and if they come right, then you've got a nice line of sight. You know, you could go back left here, but being directly in the middle is just a recipe for getting fucking murdered. Yeah, so if you wanted to force the close range fight like you were talking about, you would have wanted to pick left or right side of the point. You wouldn't have wanted to be like standing right in the middle, because you also, right in the middle, your shield was getting no value at all.
Pretty sure their Widow's cheating. I was watching him and he was locking on to kids.
Objective lost. Stop the payload.
Good shield, good hook. Nice.
Pharah, against here.
Yeah, so you can see the advantage of being so close to your shield that And also, like, they're one down, and one pretty important person down, so you could be moving up to contest them, right? You've got the stronger tank line, so this is another example of your just poor payload management and over, is like, look at the distance between your shield and the cart, and ask yourself, why are we letting them push? Right? So they've got a Winston and a D.Va, and neither of their tanks are very good at dealing with Orisa or Roadhog, and you have both. So you gave them a lot of distance for free. A lot of distance for free. When you didn't need to.
30 seconds.
They used ults to eventually actually cap, but I just assume you had no ultimates. They got them first, because you lost first fight, and then they got their ultimates up first in the second fight, so... like, the fight lasted so long because you didn't capitalize on the opportunity you had to take the fight basically to the payload and hold them there. So, and then they just got ults first. So, yeah, but overall, especially in terms of tank play, is understanding when the payload should be moving, when it should be not, when you should be fighting. So understanding kind of like the macro level about even if you are going to die by being on the payload, if you're going to get staggered, may as well get staggered on the payload itself. That is like, it's honestly pretty rare to find a video where the vast majority of the issues come from like objective based gameplay and not mechanics. Like your Orisa seemed solid enough. Your positioning on Orisa, like on Orisa specifically, you want as much distance as possible during the poke and posture phase until you actually move up to engage, especially on defense, because you do at some point actually have to stop the payload from moving, like I've been talking about. But yeah, a little bit more understanding about staggers, payload managements, keeping the payload moving during the enemy's regroup phase, stopping the payload moving as quickly as possible after you yourself have regrouped on defense is all pretty important. And just like you are 4-stacking here, so having a little bit more coordination and just realizing when your composition is at fault would be pretty strong there. But you know, if you're not going to have the coordination of like the Overwatch League Bros or a contenders team or something like that, then you simply have to have the stronger composition. So have the tanks that beat their tanks, you know, have the DPS that don't need some sort of crazy win condition in order to win a team fight. You know, just more damage, more healing, and that's the simpler way. If you don't want to think about target calling and strategy, you just have to have more resources than the other guy. When can you play Doomfist? You can play Doomfist in a lot of situations. It's hard against Orisa. Like Orisa, Hog, McCree, Pharah are all very difficult for Doomfist. But other than that, unless they have like 2 of the above mentioned, you should be okay. Doomfist can be played in a lot of situations. How do you determine who's got the stronger tank line, health pool? It's not just health pool. It's kind of like how they interact. Like D.Va and Winston trade, you know, health for mobility, whereas a Zarya and a Reinhardt is a little bit better. You know, they've got more health, more resources, and actually keeping themselves alive. But they're less mobile. And then you have what is basically the static defense comp, which is I don't move, and that's Roadhog and Orisa, and they have more health, more self-sustain, and more damage. So in terms of like the progression of tanky tanks to more mobile tanks, it's basically Winston, D.Va, Winston, D.Va, Zarya, Roadhog, Orisa, and then Reinhardt is after Zarya. But yeah, so like an Orisa and a Roadhog should just absolutely dumpster uncoordinated D.Vas and Winstons without any issue. How do I blink better as Tracer? Look in the location you want to blink. Don't try and just blink directionally using arrow keys. I'm 1136 in bronze. What should I do practice to get good? So most people who are in bronze have some sort of handicap of some sort. And I don't mean like physical handicap. I mean like your sensitivity is 100,000. Or you get 20 frames per second. So before I give anyone in bronze advice on how to climb, usually you want to be making sure that you're not handicapping your performance in one way or another with your setup, your settings, or anything like that. Do you think D.Va will still be viable after the nerf? Oh, absolutely. Yep. She's one of the 2 tanks with vertical mobility. Of course she's still going to be viable. On the first defense on point 3, I know I'm alone, but they have nothing that can pick me, and I have no cover on the payload themselves. I was looking to burn cooldowns by using free space. On the first defense on point 3, I know I'm alone, but they have nothing that can pick me, but you have nothing that can pick them. Like you have no way to actually win that fight. So You're putting yourself in unnecessary danger, and you're not actually gaining any benefit, even if you don't die. Hey, Jayne, do you think that Rein should be buffed? I don't know. I think the extra CC that they've given a lot of the other characters and a lot of the like low skill CC should be reduced. I'm a Master's Flex DPS, maining Tracer. Also play a lot of other things like Soldier, Widow, Off-Tanks, and Winston. Problem is I feel like I have reached my mechanical ceiling, and I don't think I can improve without daily practice, something I can't. Should I transition to tank in hopes of getting GM, or should I stay DPS and improve other things like positioning or an easier DPS than Tracer? You don't feel like you have the time for daily practice. Okay. Should I transition to tanks? No, I'd stick with the role you want, right? Like, progress is just going to happen slower, but you'll still progress. All right. Like in terms of improvement and climbing, skill is not linear. Skill is not linear. Okay. When you're dealing with like accuracy, for example, you will see nice gains at the start, but then as you actually improve, it'll take more and more effort to get that last little bit of skill. So this is skill on this axis, and this is time, right? So it's going to take you a lot of time to get that last little bit of improvement compared to the early on. So I'd still keep at it. But the other thing is that if you're ever dealing with like knowledge-based skill, so that's raw mechanical skill. So if you're just trying to improve the accuracy, for example, you're going to see a huge increase in your accuracy until you kind of start approaching the theoretical limit, and then it's going to become harder and harder and harder to get that last little bit of learning. But if you're learning a knowledge, something that requires thinking, then the improvement again is not linear and it's not logarithmic. You sit at this level until you figure out what you're doing wrong or what you could do better, and then you get a jump in skill. And then you sit at that skill level until you figure out what's wrong, and then you get a jump in skill here. So knowledge-based improvement is kind of like a ladder where you sit in a long time at the same skill level until you figure out either what you were doing wrong or what part of your gameplay was actually missing out on. So you improve in these steps here. So in terms of your actual play on DPS, mechanical skill is not the only thing that you'll be improving. You probably just feel stagnant because you're creeping along, you've spent time practicing, and maybe you're only a day or two away from like one of these epiphanies that's going to take you to the next step on this improvement ladder. So honestly, I just keep grinding DPS because you never know how close or how far you are away from your next epiphany, which is going to help you to improve. So I would keep grinding in terms of your mechanical skill, but just playing in comp will also lead to other sorts of improvements as well. Off topic, I just saw your setup video. Did you build your own keyboard? That's some beautiful mechanical keyboard material. You guys have no idea. I just got these babies in the mail. Oh man, nice carbon set. Building an Ergodox this weekend. Got a new keycap set for him. Yeah, it's a poker. The keyboard I use right now is a Poker 3 with Taiho keycaps. Exactly what we needed in the community, a real educational stream. Thanks for the content. You're very welcome, friend. What are the best settings for Overwatch? That is a very broad topic. Implementing the knowledge takes time too. Yes. Like, yeah, so obviously you're going to have to unlearn bad habits, but, like between each step, I guess you could call it a logarithmic, but the point is that you've gained the knowledge that you need. So, watching one of these streams, for example, if you find something here that you were lacking, maybe we have just accelerated one of those epiphanies to happen earlier. Yeah, carbons. Is a fellow RMK addict? Yes, I am.